In 1945, a B-25 bomber crashed into the Empire State Building in New York. The plane, flying at full speed, was eventually stopped by the elevator shaft, and the elevator cables were severed. Inside the elevator, a 19-year-old elevator operator fell a full 75 floors with the out-of-control elevator, but due to over 1,000 feet of cable coiled at the bottom of the elevator shaft, cushioned the impact. The elevator operator miraculously survived. Today, the protagonist of the story experiences a fall in an elevator that is 45 floors higher than the Empire State Building. What kind of thrilling story is this? Aaliyah wakes up from unconsciousness. With her eyes repeatedly covered by both hands, she couldn't recognize where she was at all. After some groping, she only felt the cold walls around her. But she quickly realized that she was inside an elevator, because the elevator was about to fall. And this descent was in free fall, with the confirmation of heavy acceleration. Aria floated in midair, taking only a few seconds to go from the 80th floor to the first. Fortunately, in the latter part, the elevator began emergency braking, preventing Aria from being shattered as she imagined. The elevator rose again, and this impact allowed him to break free. With both hands, he looked at the desolate scene outside the elevator shaft, only then realizing that he was in an unfinished building. Neither the emergency contact button nor any other means were working, so he could only focus on the escape hatch on the top of the elevator car. However, the smooth inner walls made it completely unreachable. It was then that he noticed the phone in the back pocket of his pants. Surprisingly, the first thing he did upon picking up the phone was not to call the police, but to listen to a voice message from his mom. On the other end, his mom was extremely anxious, while his dad was on the run, calling a doctor and Uncle Jack. The rumors ended amidst a barrage of gunfire and initial claims, leaving Aaliyah in immense sorrow. However, a sudden jolt caused the elevator to drop a few more feet, prompting her to finally remember to call 911. But the operator was surprised to hear that she was trapped in an elevator in Shanghai. He thought it was a tasteless joke and hung up the call, citing poor signal. Clearly, not having received 9 years of compulsory education, he didn't know that China's emergency number is 110. He could only gesture wildly at the surveillance camera and even tried to pry open the elevator doors. It wasn't until the emergency call system activated and a voice came through that he regained hope. However, not understanding Chinese, he could only request for someone who spoke English. The voice on the other end of the line made a request that every Chinese person knows: please speak more slowly. Only then did they learn about Aaliyah's situation. But after some searching, the location of the elevator did not appear. Clearly, the elevator had been erased from the system. Before they could say much more, the elevator began to descend again amidst an eerie song. This time, the speed was even greater, and Aaliyah was pressed hard against the ceiling, losing consciousness. Aaliyah heard whispers, and as she regained consciousness, she was captivated by fleeting images on the screen. The inexplicable images that appeared in her mind left her utterly confused. He could only desperately pry open the elevator doors, but this time, the elevator did not stop perfectly aligned with the exit. In his struggle, he didn't notice at all that a pair of eyes was watching his every move from behind. Seeing Bao Shen recall the day of the fall once again, Aaliyah also remembered scenes from her childhood. She, who could decompose and reassemble matter at will, told her sister that she could see a future where her sister destroyed the world at that time, and their mother also noticed their extraordinary abilities. Whether it was the sister's immunity to all diseases, or the inexplicably appearing tree outside the window, there must be some connection with nature. These memories were fragmented like a dream. When Aaliyah woke up again, she received a call from her mother, who reminded her to keep her phone safe. Her mother said that when Aaliyah was a child, she had told them about everything that was happening now. So he did not blame his daughter, but simply reminded Aaliyah that she must find her twin sister. The phone call ended with the sound of a gunshot, and young Aaliyah woke up from the dream. Since she could remember, this nightmare had been recurring repeatedly. Her parents were powerless, only able to do their best to comfort her father. When asked about the details of the dream, Aaliyah only said that her future self was watching them, trying to figure out the truth. And indeed, that's what the present Aaliyah was doing. But Jack's phone call interrupted the memory. Once again, he was currently in Afghanistan, and his voice was filled with static. Quickly losing connection due to the signal, when the screen lit up, he unexpectedly saw a group of terrorists staring back at him through the screen. And the target of their torment was his own father. The other side was torturing his father with extreme madness. And of course, they didn't spare him either. With a command, the elevator plummeted again in the private server. Aaliyah recalled her childhood memories by the sea, with her father looking at the special symbol on her hand. He asked him where the tree came from. He confessed that it was his sister's ability, while his own ability was to see the future. In the future, he is currently in the elevator, repeatedly rising and falling. His mother was murdered, and the fate of his father, Mona, and his sister is unknown. However, upon hearing all this, his father said he never blamed them. Aaliyah could only ask Jack for help, urging him to explain the situation as much as possible in such a critical moment. He could only explain everything one by one. The family was originally on vacation in Shanghai, but their father suddenly stole a car and took them on the run because he discovered that someone was already watching them. However, due to a car accident, he fell into a coma, and only upon waking did he find himself in the current situation. Jack also explained the situation to him, revealing that his father's true identity was actually the leader of the terrorist group, Ralph, and a CIA agent. It was precisely to extract a huge secret from him. At the last moment, Jack only advised him to hide the phone well, as it was the key to finding him. The screen lit up, and the other party only asked the father to reveal the whereabouts of the engineer. Faced with his tight-lipped demeanor, the terrorists shockingly demanded that Aaliyah help by taking off her clothes, or else she would personally experience the agony of falling. But as a CIA agent, the father was not to be underestimated. He seized the opportunity to grab a gun and shot 2 people on the spot. But this also successfully angered Rafe. In front of Aaliyah, Rafe shockingly cut off one of the father's ears and then cruelly pulled out his fingernails, yet the father still refused to give in. As a CIA agent, he had, of course, undergone torture training, so Rafe could only target his daughter. As the elevator descended, Aaliyah once again recalled scenes from her childhood, countless particles converging in her hands, forming a flower that instantly dissipated. In the cycle of gathering and dispersing, she made a promise with her sister to definitely hide away. Breaking fate was only to save the lives of their adoptive parents. Aaliyah snapped back to reality. Once more, the exit on the ceiling still out of reach, and the continuous falling had left him in unbearable pain. Only the warm images from his phone could give him a bit of strength. This time, he recalled the most crucial scene where his sister brutally killed a person who abused dogs. He had been engaged in activities that only brought destruction and ruin to humanity for a long time. Despite Aaliyah telling him that continuing like this would eventually lead to the death of their parents, his sister remained unrepentant. Determined to change the future, Aaliyah could only take the blame for her sister's crime. When the screen lit up again, she could only watch helplessly as her father suffered on Mercury, and learned from them that their mother had already been beheaded. As for himself, he had to feel despair in the repeated cycles of rising and falling. Jack called. They had already arrived in Shanghai. Based on the information Aaliyah revealed, there were 8 buildings that matched the characteristics. What he needed to do now was to stay strong for his father, who was being repeatedly beaten. But the question Jack asked afterward made Aaliyah's heart twist again. He actually asked who her father made the last mysterious phone call to before the car accident. Did he mention anything about the engineer, the blonde little girl, or anything related to the doctor or the experiment? The barrage of questions left Aaliyah's mind in turmoil. In the end, she firmly insisted that her family was just an ordinary family, only pleading for Jack to come and save them. Jack, he was trying to find a way to restore the phone's network signal so they could use location tracking to determine their position. But in the elevator, the only way out was through the exit at the top. Just as he was about to successfully reach the top, the elevator suddenly dropped a few feet, and the screen lit up, showing her father, who had been tortured to the point of exhaustion, while Ralph continued to threaten him incessantly. This conversation was overheard by Jack, who was listening in on the call. He revealed to Aaliyah that her father was transporting a girl with superpowers. This was done to help the girl's engineer father, because he invented a method to advance human development. Aaliyah's father helped them settle in Europe, but the information was intercepted by Russia, which sent Ralph's team to carry out the kidnapping. However, all of Ralph's men died in the falling elevator. The engineer and the child also disappeared, and only her father knows their whereabouts. The elevator ascended once more, but this time it had nothing to do with Ralph. It turned out that a worker next door noticed something unusual here. Aaliyah learned from the screen that Ralph had already sent people to handle the situation, and she shouted loudly for the worker to leave quickly. However, the worker outside clearly didn't understand English, but that's okay. He can take his time learning in the next life. The elevator plummeted straight down from the 95th floor, one after another, and Aaliyah was almost shaken to pieces. But she remained incredibly strong, just like her father. Jack called, and Aaliyah hurriedly hid her phone. They hadn't received Aaliyah's signal, but that's okay. Only 4 more buildings need to be checked. Aaliyah just needed to wait. Besides this good news, she unexpectedly discovered that a piece of sheet metal in the corner of the cabin had been pried open due to the impact, staring into the bottomless elevator shaft. She still mustered the courage to climb out of the cabin and cross the steel beams, approaching the exit. But the distance was simply too far, forcing her to abandon the idea. The elevator that flashed by her side almost scared her out of her wits. Before the still-shaken Aaliyah could return to the cabin, her lower back was slashed by the sharp sheet metal. On the big screen, her father, who had been tortured beyond recognition, still managed to squeeze out a smile for his daughter with all his strength, despite having a bloody hand with only one ear. If her father could be so strong, how could she give up? She hurriedly called Jack, determined to escape through this gap. But Jack said that only by staying could he save his father's life. However, seeing his father on the screen with his teeth pulled out and his wrists broken, how could he bear to sit and wait for death? Jack just told her to hold on for 3 more moves and they would be able to find him. Aaliyah could only muster her strength once more. But as the elevator descended, her phone fell outside, and the hallucination reappeared. Her future sister actually told her that if future Aaliyah failed, she would never forgive her. Accompanied by scenes of her sister destroying the world, Aaliyah woke up again, and an impatient Ralph directly shot at her father. In the midst of extreme chaos, the phone officially started ringing. He could only take the risk again to climb out of the cabin, from top to bottom, from left to right, crossing one beam after another in the howling wind of the elevator shaft, and finally succeeded in retrieving the phone. With wounds on his body, he returned to the cabin and immediately called Jack. But he didn't notice anything. Behind him, Ralph saw everything. His father was already on the brink of death, and now it was a moment of decision, him or his father. Ellie's plea only resulted in the elevator descending once more. Ralph decided to give him another chance, and called the CIA to inquire about the engineer's whereabouts. However, Aria, while ascending, called Jack, who had already reached the first floor and was given a script to stall for time. Little did she know, the Jack on the other end of the line was actually Ralph in disguise. At this moment, the unsuspecting Aria indeed requested the opportunity to be alone with her father, as Jack had suggested. She intended to ask about the engineer's whereabouts. Ralph was, of course, happy to oblige, and the two finally had a chance to be alone. The father finally had the opportunity to apologize, saying that from the first moment he saw the two sisters, he was determined to protect the 3 of them. But unfortunately, he was going to break that promise. There was no such thing as an engineer. It was a fabrication he created to mislead others. When Aria was a child, she had told him everything that was going to happen in the future. By concealing Aria's abilities, he aimed to prevent those in the know from finding them, and his memory was lost along with the ability. It was all because of the person he killed back then. Now Aria can finally reveal the truth. It wasn't her who committed the crime, but her sister. Only then did their father realize he had messed everything up. Jack's voice came from the other side of the change, and the father was shocked. Jack couldn't possibly contact him, and Ralph stopped pretending. It turned out that the ones he had been desperately searching for were the 2 sisters. He raised his gun to deal with this useless person. In the final moment, the father could only have Aria play the audio from the phone's memo. Amidst a burst of noise, the last piece of the memory puzzle was also recovered. The father locked him in the safe, promising to help his future self keep this secret. Knowing that his future self was watching the present through memories, separated by time and space, he could only say one thing: "I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you. I love you, baby." Like Aaliyah's ability, which was ultimately sealed with the scattered particles, at this moment, Aaliyah could only watch helplessly as her father died before her eyes. It was he who protected her throughout her childhood. Now, she has her own mission. The elevator, out of control, ascended to the top floor and opened the hatch. But Aaliyah did not intend to leave. Instead, she fell along with the elevator as its various components disintegrated and the entire cabin shattered. Aaliyah also regained her abilities amidst the scattered particles. Seeing this, Ralph could only order a retreat, but he was delayed by a phone call. Meanwhile, his team, under the command of a face that appeared on the cabin, plummeted rapidly. Witnessing this scene, Ralph's mental state remained calm as he spoke into the phone, requesting another team. In time, he will make a comeback. And Arya also returns to her father amidst the gathering and dispersing of particles. In his final moments, her father reassures her, saying that some things are beyond human capability, but she and her sister can find him and then benefit humanity. Her father's figure dissipates in a dawn light, and Arya sets off on the streets of Shanghai, heading towards the next future. The end. Ascension is a science fiction thriller film released in Australia in 2021. It's been a long time since I've seen a work that grips the heart and mind like this. The first half builds suspense layer by layer, and the midsection scenes in the elevator shaft made my scalp tingle. For friends with claustrophobia and acrophobia, it might be too intense. I didn't expect that, in the latter half, the mystery would be revealed to be related to superpowers. I'm already looking forward to the sequel where the two sisters take opposite paths and engage in an earth-shattering superpower battle. I wonder if any of you have ever tried a drop tower ride. Aside from the impact caused by the elevator, the sensation of ascending and descending should be no different from a drop tower. Of course, you can enjoy a drop tower ride, but if you encounter a sudden elevator drop, in real life, that's a different story. You should immediately press all the buttons, lean against the wall, squat slightly with your knees bent, and look for an opportunity to press the emergency call button. If you have any thoughts, feel free to join me in the comments section for a discussion. Alright, today's journey ends here. Sir has gone to Wade's house to develop a new route. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and like. See you at our next destination. So,